Well, good morning and welcome at last to Elevenses. It's show number 270. It's Sunday, the 11th of September. It's quite a sunny and mild day outside at the moment here, and I am around 90 minutes late with the show due to some technical problems this morning. So this is actually being streamed live to YouTube at the moment, and it will be uploaded to Facebook later today. But in the meantime, in today's show, I have some stories for you. The outgoing government, just before it disappeared, announced a scheme for more EV charging points. The Vincent name has been acquired by the Indian company Bajaj. Northants police have taken delivery of some hybrid three-wheelers. Eurobike sales are taking a tumble, but South American sales are actually on the up at the moment. NIO have taken a backward step by fitting some cheaper sodium-ion batteries to one of their new scooter ranges. A stolen Bentley has been tracked to Karachi, and I know that's a car, but I think it's interesting from where thieved vehicles end up. And the signs of being seen. Roadshow will go to the Rye Emergency Services Day down in Sussex at the seaside town in a couple of weeks' time. So hopefully we might even see you down there. And we'll finish off with today's discussion point, which is actually about the rather complex history of Vincent HRD. So, as I say, normally the show would be going out live at 11 on Facebook, but today it's about 12:30 and it's going out live on YouTube. I will get it over to Facebook when I get a moment today. So, first things first, though, let's just remember the late Queen. There's been plenty said about her over the last few days, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the Queen. Simply to say that she was born in 1926, and that is, a long time ago. For reference, Vincent HRD, which I will talk about, as I say, in a moment, are just about as old as the Queen was. And she obviously had a remarkable life, and whatever you think about the monarchy, and I'm no monarchist, she certainly had a very, very impactful life as far as the UK was concerned, as well as other countries around the world, of course. Anyway, let's move on from that subject. Will be plenty more of that to come, I know. And let's just talk about the outgoing Johnson administration. Now, something that possibly slipped the radar over the last few weeks of their zombie administration, some people called it. The outgoing government did actually announce a 20 million pilot scheme, which would provide more than 1,000 electric vehicle charging points across England. Now, the new pilot, which has been dubbed the Local EV Infrastructure Scheme, LEVI for short, will create both on-street charge points and larger charging hubs, similar, in other words, to petrol stations in areas which are currently said to be poorly equipped to deal with electric vehicles. Now, although sales of electric motorcycles are not increasing so fast that they're going to take over from cars and van sales immediately, the fact is that EV vehicles generally are on the up. Motorcycles are struggling a little bit behind EV cars and vans, but with the end date in sight for combustion engine motorcycles, 2035 is being talked about. It could be earlier too. The fact is that the infrastructure required to charge motorcycles away from home is still missing. Now, the majority of electric bikes we're finding at the moment on the market are not actually aimed at long range travel. They're designed for short distance commuting. And so for most of those, the fact that they can either be charged from a domestic power supply via a garage, or the battery actually taken out and carried somewhere to be charged indoors from a 3-pin plug, is useful, because it means basically you can do all your charging at home. But for electric motorcycles to move into the mainstream, they will need longer range. And what we've seen with the Xperia, their adventure bike. The claimed range is 400 kilometers, 200 and something miles. Whether you'll actually get that in real life from that motor, I very much doubt. The problem therefore lies in providing regular charging points at the roadside in sensible places that people actually want to go. So that means, for example, I would suggest motorcycle parking bays would need to come with charging points. I would also suggest that the charging points need to be centered in places where people actually visit. It's all very well putting them in street lamps, on residential streets, but that's not helping riders who are on a journey and want to stop and recharge whilst they have a meal or something similar. So I think there needs to be a real rethink on how these places are installed. Now, the so-called on-street residential charge point scheme has actually managed to get in, it says in the report that I read, 2,900 chargers, with a total of around 10,000 being proposed. Now, the new scheme, which puts in 1,000 more chargers, they're distributed between Barnet, Dorset, Durham, Kent, Lincolnshire, North Yorkshire, Nottinghamshire, Suffolk, and Warrington. And frankly, 10,000 charging points, even with those extra 1,000, it's a drop in the bucket of what is actually needed when there are 40 million vehicles on the road and well over 1 million motorcycles. And ultimately you kind of have to ask whether it's the government's job to put these charging points in anyway. Realistically, I think it's only when the petrol companies themselves begin to realize that they need to start replacing their petrol and diesel pumps with fast charging points. I think that's the time that we'll really start to see a network that can handle long distance travel. And I think we are quite a long way away from that at the moment. Now, next story. Back in February, I mentioned that the Northants police had been working with a local company known as White Motorcycle Concepts in the development of three-wheeled petrol and hybrid motorcycles. They're based on Yamaha's Tricity 300, and the redesigned bike not only features the original Yamaha 300cc single petrol engine, but it also features electric motors to the wheels. Now, the combination of those actually should give the bike more performance if it's needed, more acceleration. But of course, the electric motors will do most of the work when the bike is in movement, and the 300cc petrol engine is said to be there only to kick in to provide assistance when the electric motors need it. But the interesting thing in some ways is that the Tricity has had a complete redesign, Tri-City, I think it might be pronounced, so that the bike actually features a kind of tunnel through the middle, which is a sort of an aerodynamic venturi, and the result is that there's much reduced drag, and it's a very similar design, in fact, to WMC's own speed record attempt motorcycle. And it's said that even with the panniers and things hanging off the back of the bike, which make it about as aerodynamic as a brick, that the net effect is still an efficiency boost of about 50% over the pure petrol engine bike. Now, the original was actually shown off at the NEC back at the back end of last year, but the Force is now said to have taken delivery of 8 machines which are ready for use in what is claimed to be a world first. Now, Chief Constable Nick Adderley said, "You'll not see these machines anywhere else in the world. For the last 3 years, as the National Police Chiefs Council lead for motorcycling, I've been working with a local company and we've been designing these motorcycles. It starts to attack that green agenda which all emergency services are battling with right now. We are the world's first in terms of getting this machine running. In terms of a police force that has this bike, the aerodynamics and the engineering that have gone into it has not been seen anywhere in the world." And he said that the bikes would make neighborhood policing easier by making officers visible and offering easy access to different communities. Another plus of these three-wheelers, of course, is that they can be driven on a standard car license instead of a motorcycle license. So I assume that they will be running proper training courses for officers who will get to use them. Now, Nick Adderley also added that the force now wants its peers to follow Northampton's lead, and they say things are all already looking promising. He says, we want to promote the use of these machines far and wide. We've had interest in these machines all over the world, but we're going to prove the concept here. And if you want to see a video of the machines in action, you can follow the link, which is just popping up on screen at the moment. Right, okay, just to remind you, you are watching Survival Skills, Kevin Williams here with my regular Elevenses show. It is going out live on YouTube today, since I had problems with streaming it directly to Facebook at 11 o'clock this morning, so it is about an hour and a half behind schedule. Normally, as I say, it will go out 11 a.m. on Facebook, and then I copy it over to YouTube later, because that turns out to be quicker generally than letting YouTube process it live. Anyway, on with the news. Now, it turns out that the Indian giant Bajaj has actually purchased the rights to the name Vincent, and it appears that the company has also taken control of other brand names, including Horner Race Developments, HRD. You'll see why that's important in a moment, and also Egley Vincent. Now, Bajaj Auto are the world's 5th largest motorcycle manufacturer, and holding the Vincent name would position them to take on 3 other Indian-owned marques with British origins. Now, as you probably know, Royal Enfield are currently enjoying exceptional success with their newly engineered 350 singles and their 650 twins, and that's a classic British name which is now owned by the Eicher Group in India. BSA are owned by Mahindra, who also own, incidentally, Yawa and Peugeot, amongst other famous names. And they have recently relaunched the water-cooled 650 Gold Star single via their Classic Legends brand. And I'm sure you'll recall that TVS Motors are behind the rescue and relaunch of Norton motorcycles. Now, so far, no formal confirmation of the purchase has been made by Bajaj itself, but the transfer documents have been found online and appeared in an Indian press release. Now, although we still tend to think of Japan as the mainstay of modern motorcycle construction, and of India and China as building cheap, small capacity bikes, things are changing rapidly. Alongside Indonesia, India has actually emerged as a powerhouse of motorcycle manufacturer, and along with the Chinese manufacturers, they have begun to make a serious play for global sales. Now, in India, this was initially at least through tie-ups with the existing high-profile brands such as KTM and Triumph, but increasingly the top 3 companies in India, Hero, Bajaj and TVS, have begun to make a play for global sales, and Royal Enfield, of course, have made huge gains internationally in recent years. Like Hero, Bajaj have previously focused on exporting small capacity and relatively unsophisticated machines, but that is all likely to change, of course. The fact is that the days when the bikes sold all over India were cheap and cheerful, sort of 100 or 150cc singles, they're not over exactly. Those commuter bikes are still big sellers, but the Indian market is growing rapidly for bigger and more expensive machines, and that's why Ducati, for example, are selling increasing numbers of bikes in the country. Now, the press attention paid to the new BSA Gold Star does suggest that Bajaj have seen the benefit of owning a prestigious British name as a means of moving away from that budget end of the market towards a more sophisticated, higher profile bike. Now, Bajaj actually has the benefit of being a much larger organization than either of its main rivals, which effectively gives it greater leverage. And as well as its own huge volume of output, Bajaj already has those manufacturing deals in place with KTM, and it has already been tasked with constructing Triumph's upcoming baby range of smaller displacement models, which I have talked about in previous shows. Now, I can honestly say I would never have thought to see Royal Enfield topping the UK bike sales charts, but that's where they are right now. Go and look at the registrations and you'll find they are now the 350 single in its two forms are the best-selling bike in the country, and BSA and Norton, of course, are back in the shops. Although Norton, they're still kind of developing their or redeveloping the previous Gardner era inspired bikes. Now, with the current success of those Indian-built sort of modern classic motorcycles owing much of their inspiration to the British manufactured bikes of the 50s and 60s, I would say that it's actually very likely that we will see an Indian manufactured motorcycle bearing the Vincent name in relatively short order, probably sooner rather than later. I don't think it's likely that that name will just sit on the shelves. Now, whether Bajaj follows the Royal Enfield lead of developing the bike sort of fully in-house, or whether they take the approach followed by classic legends with the BSA to establishing a manufacturing and research and development base here first, that would emphasize the Britishness of the Vincent if they did that. Is obviously open to question. We don't know the answer to that yet. And the second question is exactly where such a machine would be pitched. Now, Royal Enfield and BSA have pretty much pitched their machines at the affordable end of the market. The BSA is under £8,000, if I remember correctly, and the Royal Enfield singles obviously a lot less than that. The 650 twins are in that 7,000 to 8,000 bracket, so they are affordable by any stretch. The TVS, on the other hand, with their Norton relaunch, have unashamedly gone straight to the top end of the market with a very expensive limited edition road bike. So with Vincent's own heritage, I suspect it would probably make sense for the bike to be reborn as a Norton competitor, although I could be wrong. They could come up with a sort of a 500 single or something and try to pitch it at the lower end of the market too. But if they did that and had the R&D work, possibly even machine construction done in the UK, I'm sure that would give the biker some social cachet. Okay, now don't forget, I will always try to answer questions. If you do add them to the comment stream, that's something I'll try to get back to during the show. Any feedback on the show is always welcome. Obviously, today we're going out on YouTube due to problems trying to get the show out on Facebook on time. So you're probably going to be posting after you watch this recording. So I'll catch up with you when I get a moment. So coming back to the Vincent purchase there, is it a good time to be launching a new brand? Well, it kind of depends on where you plan to sell. Now, here in Europe, bike sales have taken something of a tumble. The latest UK sales for the first of 8 months of 2022 are up around 6% so far over the same period last year, probably not unconnected with the fine summer weather we've had, but elsewhere in Europe, sales are down. Part of the issue appears to have been short supply of machines arriving from China, which of course includes many of the smaller Japanese motorcycles before people start thinking it's entirely Chinese bikes which are not arriving. The production of some Japanese machine has been put on hold. Harley Davidson went on hold earlier this year too, because they couldn't get parts. Specifically, it seems the electrical components, circuit boards, ECUs, that kind of thing. And of course, the market has now been hit by the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the immediate rapid rise in fuel prices and the future forecast for inflation, which is likely to reduce purchasing power in the middle term. So the result is that whilst first quarter sales in Europe were actually up 9.6%, so looking quite buoyant, the second quarter was actually down 3.5%. In July alone, sales were down over 5% in Europe. But head to South America, and sales are booming across most of the continent. It was the South America recorded record highs in 2021, and the first 2 quarters of 2022 saw even higher growth, double-digit growth down there in South America. So, What are some of the problems facing the motorcycle industry? Well, one is as we make this transition to electrically propelled motorcycles, there is actually a problem building enough lithium ion batteries at an affordable price. And this means that the Chinese scooter manufacturer NIO are actually launching an electric two-wheeler with a sodium ion battery next year. Now, this is one of the scooters that NIO produce. I'm not sure if that's the particular model which is going to be affected, or whether it's just a sort of generic picture of a new scooter, but you can see it there. They are actually the 9th largest two-wheel motorcycle manufacturer in the world based on global sales in 2021. And whilst sodium ion batteries are actually heavier than lithium batteries, they are cheaper. And sodium is actually in plentiful supply. And of course, being in salt water, it's much, much easier to refine. And there could even be a move back to some extremely advanced versions of lead acid batteries, which now have a longer service life, which is offered by new technology. Now, NIO already offer a nano graphene lead acid battery in some of their electric models. Okay, so as I said last time out, there are alternative technologies under investigation. NIO themselves are testing lithium manganese iron phosphate batteries. Now, NIO do primarily sell their low-cost two-wheelers to the Chinese market. They shift around 1.5 million vehicles there each year, but they are also targeting the international sales too. And they actually sold around 300,000 EVs in overseas markets last year alone. And they did debut their portfolio at the Milan Motorcycle Show last November for Europe. Now, some will undoubtedly be thinking that the move to a heavier battery pack confirms the old myth that electric motorcycles are much heavier than petrol engine alternatives. But frankly, with a small battery for a short range scooter, you're unlikely to really, I would have thought, notice the difference. They are not that much heavier. Now, nevertheless, if the battery technology can be used for those smaller batteries, that may bring on some kind of benefit for the larger lithium ion batteries, which could still be fitted to longer range machines. NIO had actually increased the price of their lithium ion batteries as of April by 7%. So you can see that's a fairly significant price rise. And there are, of course, also concerns about mining lithium. The nature of the extraction process actually offsets the benefits of producing electric power for vehicles in the first place in some ways. So last week's report on the aluminium sulfur battery, which is under development, does show one thing for sure: this is not yet a mature technology. Okay, so do set a reminder for yourself if you are enjoying today's show. It does go out Wednesdays and Sundays, and normally it will be at 11 o'clock, and normally it will also be on Facebook. And the recording I generally put up on YouTube after the Facebook show has gone live. It's just usually a little bit easier to interact with people on Facebook. I have got a comment. Clive has found me. Good morning, Clive. Well done. Yeah, we've had some technical problems, as you might have guessed, this morning. So well done for finding me over here on YouTube. As I said, it will go up on Facebook later when I get a moment. Now, I know this is a car story, but if you've ever wondered where stolen motorcycles end up, it might throw some light on it. Now, the little bikes, the scooters and 125s, probably gets raced around the local park or stripped for spares and then dumped in the local lake. But where do top of the range stolen bikes go when they vanish? Well, the reappearance of a Bentley Mulsanne V8 worth £250,000 may offer a clue, because the luxury car was actually found in the port of Karachi in Pakistan, almost 5,000 miles away from its owner in London. And it seems the vehicle was actually shipped to Pakistan on fake diplomatic import documents. And once it got there, it was fitted with forged registration plates. Now, the good news is that those involved in shifting the vehicle halfway across the world actually failed to find that it had a tracker on board. That tracker worked presumably out in India, and it led the National Crime Agency here in the UK to direct the authorities in Karachi to a home which they raided, and they found the car parked under a cover on the driveway, and it was easily identified by its chassis number. Now, whether the new owner was aware of the fact that the vehicle was stolen isn't clear. He has been arrested apparently, but he claimed that the seller had guaranteed that the vehicle would be clear of all liabilities and papers from concerned authorities by November. But the fact is that the local authorities out there actually believe that the scam relies on someone who works at the Motor Vehicle Registration Authority. Now, they didn't say whether that is in the UK or whether it's actually out in Pakistan, but it does give us a clue to perhaps where some of the high-end motorcycles have disappeared, and maybe that some of them have gone along the same sort of route. Right, now, I promised to come back to the story of Vincent before the end of the show, and so that's what I'm doing at the moment. With the resurgence of Royal Enfield, the rescue of Norton, the return of BSA, they've all generated headlines around the world. And in some ways, the return of Vincent could actually prove an even more significant comeback story. The company itself actually has quite an interesting backstory, so I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to give you some insight into Vincent's history. The company was actually founded in 1928, so 2 years after the Queen was born, as I mentioned earlier, when Philip Vincent bought the pre-existing manufacturing name HRD. And that is why the bikes were initially known as Vincent HRDs. Now, during the Second World War, Vincent primarily made munitions, but Vincent engines were trialled in boats and portable pumps during the war, a bit like Moto Guzzi then there. And the end of hostilities saw Vincent ready to return to motorcycle production. Now, Vincent have always been seen as a premium British motorcycle manufacturer with some sort of fairly innovative single-cylinder 500s and the 1000cc twin-cylinder V engine, which is probably their most famous. And they carried out some sort of interesting developments, which we kind of take for granted now, but took a long time to be seen in other motorcycles, such as the motor being incorporated as a stressed member of the frame itself. Now, the 1000cc Vincents are probably the bike that we know best of all. Let's get a picture up on screen. There it is. That's a Black Shadow, and the company became very famous for their very rapid motorcycles, and they actually gained more speed records than any other manufacturer during their post-war production run. And that 1948 Black Shadow there was the fastest bike in the world at the time, tested at 125 miles per hour, and it's a model that remains immensely coveted today if you can get hold of one. So much so that the pristine example fetched a mammoth $929,000. So you can work that out at current UK prices. It's certainly well over £800,000. That was at an auction in 2018. Now, partly due to falling motorcycle sales and partly due to the diversion of funds to finance the development of, believe it or not, the V-twin engine for an ultra lightweight aircraft, and specifically an engine that was aimed at powering a pilotless target drone. The motorcycle element of the company ran into financial trouble during the 1950s because they didn't get a government contract to produce these engines as they'd hoped. So after heavy losses and just 1 week before Christmas in 1955, the company rolled the last bike off their production line and discontinued motorcycle production altogether. They turned initially to general engineering before the company finally folded and went into receivership in 1959. And there, the story does get a little bit more complicated because the name and the bikes stayed in the public consciousness in the decades that followed. There were various companies like Egley Vincent that took the engines and built them into more modern machines. And at some point, one David M. Holder appears to have got hold of the Velocette brand name, as well as Vincent and some other trade names. So that is what happened in the UK. Mr. Holder acquired Vincent. Now, in the US, another company, which was called Vincent Motors LLC, held US trademarks under someone called Bernard Lye, who was attempting to revive the Vincent name in the early 2000s. Now, he got as far as building 5 prototypes. One actually used an original Vincent motor, but 4 were, rather interestingly, based on the Honda RC51 engine. So that was the big Honda 1000cc V-twin. But that venture ended when Lye was actually killed on a bike touring trip. Now, in 2012, coming back to the UK, Holder attempted to gain control of those US trademarks. But here's where it gets really interesting, because it appears that sometime between 2013 and 2014, whilst he was engaged in a legal battle to get those trademarks, Eicher Motor Limited, you'll remember I mentioned them earlier as the company behind Royal Enfield, they attempted themselves to buy the US trademarks. Now, my guess is that that was not unconnected with their own efforts at developing a V-twin around that time based on their 350cc single motors. And that's actually the same route historically that Vincent actually took in making their trademark 1000cc V-twin motor. That they were actually a pair of their own 500 single motors built onto a common crankcase, not uncommon as a way of building a V-twin. In any event, the application by Eicher was eventually thrown out to the US courts. I believe that took around 3 years to resolve. And although I'm not entirely clear on who owns the US trademarks, presumably Mr. Holder did get hold of them. That was the situation as it rested until just over a week ago, when that report in the Indian press revealed that Bajaj Auto, who are based in Pune in India, have actually registered Vincent as a trademark of their own. Right, so that's pretty much it for today. Interesting backstory there to Vincent. I hope you enjoyed that little story. Now, a couple of things to alert you to over the next few days. Don't forget, I am presenting the Science of Being Seen, an in-depth look at the difference between visibility and conspicuity and what camouflage actually means. That'll be first Wednesday in October now, isn't it? Because we're already in September. I can't remember what the date is, but have a look. It's up in the preamble there somewhere. The November event, which I have just created, is all about the use of visualization and sports psychology in allowing us to learn tricks of motorcycling actually from the comfort of our own armchair. If that sounds wild, do tune in, and I think you'll find it a particularly interesting insight into how we can learn things and how the brain can be fooled into thinking it's experienced a real life situation by using our imagination. That's the essence of this technique called visualization. It's a widespread technique in sports psychology. It's just not been used in motorcycling. So that is Wednesday, the 2nd of November at 8 p.m. The logins for both of those is up in the preamble. It's £5 a ticket for both of those, so please spread the word for those. The recent talk I gave was on riding systems, and that was very well received on Wednesday last week. And couple of other points. Science of Being Seen. I will also be taking that along to the Rye Emergency Services Day, and I'll be along there with DocBike and a couple of other organisations, and that will be round the back of Rye Police Station. I think we were hoping to have it on the quayside, but didn't work out. But that's Saturday, 24th of September. So if you are down in the Rye area between 11 and 2, just pop in around to the corner to the local police station and see what's going on behind there. It's obviously a popular destination for bikers, and hopefully the weather will be fine, and just come along and see what we're doing. I'll be talking very briefly or in short order about the Sights Are Being Seen project to anybody who's interested. And final point, I did mention that there were 2 hurricanes that were swirling around the Atlantic on Wednesday, and I did say that they could affect our weather for the next week or so. Well, the good news is they are affecting our weather, but not perhaps in the way we might expect. Now, in the latest forecast, Danielle, which was the first of those 2 hurricanes, has actually headed off towards Portugal. And what it's actually doing as it sort of arrives on the Portuguese coast is actually sending a plume of warm air from the south north, and that will reach the UK tomorrow. So we could have a very, very pleasant day tomorrow indeed. 25 degrees, 26 degrees is forecast. Earl, the second of the 2 storms, which was behind Danielle, is now forecast to head in general direction of Iceland, link up with another low pressure zone, form a powerful system, but it will pass well to the north of the UK. And the good news for this is it will help a zone of high pressure to build in over the UK next week. And that should bring a period of dry, bright and hopefully sunny weather across much of Britain, although temperatures will be a little bit on the cool side. So just to follow up the story on hurricanes, I was predicting the weather could be a little bit on the bad side if they hit us. They're missing us, and so yes, you can see not all hurricanes are bad for the UK. So, right, that is it. Many apologies for the delays in getting online today. Many apologies for arriving on the on YouTube Live rather than Facebook. I'm not sure where the problems were. I tried several times to get a program recorded on Facebook, and that simply didn't work. So it's worked fine on YouTube. So whether the problems are at Facebook or whether they were at StreamYard, which is the software I use, I don't know. But if they have been resolved and I'm here live, and I have got hopefully a non-stuttering show out, that's good, even if it is 90 minutes late. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks for watching today. Back on Wednesday at 11, hopefully, and in the usual place also, hopefully, on Facebook. So once again, if you're out there on the bike today, do enjoy your riding, but stay shiny side up.